This is former Indiana basketball player Brian Evans, and you're listening to Indiana Sports Beat with Jim Coyle.
Today's guest is brought to you by Reynolds Family Dentistry of Sellersburg. You need $1 million smile for those championship photos, and that's exactly what you'll get with Reynolds Family Dentistry. Welcome back. Indiana Sports Beat coming to you from the Golf Club at Eagle Point Studios on this Monday, 3rd day of August, joined now by one of our absolute favorites, Mike DeCourcy from the Sporting News, Fox, Big Ten Network. He's ubiquitous. Mike, how are you, sir?
I'm very well, Jim. How are you?
Doing great. Todd here as well. Man, over the weekend, I just started laughing. The Big Ten, they may want to change their acronym to the WWE next winter for basketball.
Why would you say that?
Oh, I just meant with the return of all these guys that are coming back, Luka Garza and Desomu, and it's just going to be such a bloodbath with so many great teams. I don't know, Illinois, Iowa, who's going to be the favorite in the Big Ten, and they could be the favorite to be in 1-2 in the country for all I know.
It's going to be an amazing. When I think of the WWE, I think of fake stuff. So this is going to be real. I mean, it's going to get real immediately. It's going to be an amazing year, and it's interesting because coming off of last year, and I looked at this yesterday when I was writing about Luka. Just to be sure, I looked at the bracket matrix because we didn't have an official bracket. So the bracket matrix, for those who don't know, is a composite ranking of around 100 online brackets. And they include all Joe Lenardi's, mine, Jerry Palm's, and then some others that are more analytical in nature, that go more numerically. But there's 100. So you get a composite of what the people who study this stuff are thinking. And obviously you can't know exactly what the committee's going to do, but it's a general idea of this is what the field would have looked like since we didn't have tournaments for the most part, and we didn't have official bracket. And there were 10 Big Ten teams last year. And we all sat there and thought, I mean, there's no way it can be better than this. This is going to be as good as it's ever been. And then Luka comes back, and Kofi comes back, and Ayo comes back, and Trace comes back. And Aaron Henry does the right thing at Michigan State. And really the only player you lost who sort of thought he might come back and was Xavier Tillman. And I don't think Xavier made a wrong decision. There just was part of him that really wanted to play another year of college basketball. A little hard when you're married, when you have 2 kids, and you have a shot at being a first-rounder. A little hard to stay in. So, like I said, tough to criticize that decision. But with everybody that could have come back, just about did, and with all of the players who really are great college players who didn't really think about it, a guy maybe like Micah Potter at Wisconsin or someone like that. You just have such a deep, strong league. All the guys at Rutgers, there were no obvious pro candidates there, but they have a whole group back from a team that was going to make the NCAA tournament a year ago. It's really amazing how gifted this league is going to be. Whether you'll have 10 NCAA tournament teams again somewhat depends on places like Penn State hanging on without a guy like Lamar Stevens, and Minnesota making progress. But when you think about it, if you want to know how deep this league will be, start ranking the teams in your own, just get a pen and paper and start ranking the teams and see how far you get before you put Purdue down. And you guys know Purdue's not going to fool around this year. I mean, they're going to try to have a great year, and they're probably going to find a way to have a great year. So it's just the league is so loaded that it may even find a way to surpass last year.
And Todd mentioned, we were talking a minute ago, that think about the possibility of playing a conference-only season, and that's going to be all you get to worry about. It's like going into a boxing match every game.
Of all the years to do that, and I hope we're not in that circumstance. I know that Dan Gavitt has told me, he reiterated in a podcast, online interview with Andy Katz, who works for the NCAA as well as Fox and Big Ten, He reiterated that he believes that they are confident that they will start basketball on November 10th. I don't know whether that's what we'll do or not, but he said that they're confident that they'll do that. And so I hope that we have a regular season and not a conference-only season. But if we do go to a conference-only season, I will be very curious to see how do they judge? I mean, how would they have a selection process? And I even wrote a column a few weeks ago that goes very much against my almost religious beliefs. I'm not going to mock, my religion by saying that they are true religious beliefs, but they're pretty close. And that is that the tournament should never be bigger than it is. But this year, if you were to have a conference-only season, I might make an exception for that because we really don't know if you have a conference-only season who the best teams are. You can only guess. And I don't think that's a way to do it.
No, we've seen that. That kind of takes us back to college football in the 70s when the mythical national champions and all that. It's not much fun, Todd.
Yeah, you'd have two teams in a year claiming a national championship at that point, and you'd have an AP champion and a coaches poll, and that's just a situation we definitely don't want to get into. But I mean, just thinking about a conference only schedule. I mean, you talk about a young team with Indiana. I mean, even the Trace Jackson Davises of the world are only sophomores.
I was going to ask you, talk about the importance of having those games before you get to that.
That's where you've got to give a huge advantage to a team like Iowa, in my opinion, because they just they're old as a team, and heck, I think Bohannon is going to be in his 13th year at Iowa. I mean that team is just going to have an advantage. Now, it doesn't mean they're going to win it all; they still got to go out and prove it. But man, I would look forward. I don't want it to be conference only either, but I certainly look forward to the conference season when it happens.
I will say this that. If you were in that circumstance, the team that I would give the greatest edge to would be Wisconsin, because Iowa still has to figure out how does Bohannon fit into things, where do they put everybody, how do they make the offense go exactly the way they want it to do, and they have to figure out how to be better than the 97th best defense in the country. Wisconsin just has to go out and be Wisconsin, and they found Wisconsin in the last 2 months of last year after Kobe King transferred. They found out that rhythm that they've often had once they get to the Big Ten regular season. I don't know whether they have any reason to lose that. And so they're the team that if we had very little run-up to the regular season, they're the team that I would give the biggest edge to. Michigan State's going to figure it out. They got a ton of guys.
I was just going to say, when's the last time we were talking about somebody who's going to be at the top of the Big Ten, and we're not even talking about Michigan State?
Jimmy, have to talk about them because they're going to be terrific. It may take them a little longer to find who their best five are, who the best three guys coming off the bench, how do they rotate, all that stuff. It may take them a little bit of time because you're losing Cassius Winston. Everything flowed from him for the last 2-3 years. So. Wisconsin, though, it's there. They just have to make sure they don't lose it.
And Michigan State is traditionally a team that does start out a little slower than some because they play a rigorous schedule usually, but they usually are one of those teams that when March rolls around, they've got it together.
That's absolutely true, and it's interesting. They would be the one team that'd be most prepared for 24 or so, because I don't know what the plan would be, but let's say 24 high major games, which would what you'd get in a Big Ten only schedule, somewhere around that 24, 26 high major games. They're used to that. It's what Tom's done to them so many times in the past.
We're talking about how tough the conference is, and it is. And Todd, Larry, you've played in times, but this has happened before. We just kind of forget how many great teams there are at a time. But back when you were playing, there were some deep teams, but this is different. I mean, I don't know that it's ever been this deep. I mean, it goes, like Mike said earlier, almost to the bottom. And even when you get to the bottom, those aren't really days off. They're just you're better than those teams are, but they don't come with any guarantees.
Right. And we talked about, almost every week this year, we talked about how this was a unique season for the Big Ten in general. And I think Mike just hit on that a second ago and saying we thought it was unique. However, this year might match it or surpass it. We really don't know yet. But, when you look at a team like Purdue last year that, was probably iffy on making the tournament, probably on the outside looking in maybe. And you look at a team like them that can make 19 threes and beat Wisconsin by 30 points, and they can beat Virginia by 30 points. And that's a team that's in your league that has to be a couple of your easy wins. It's just amazing what the Big Ten is going to be able to be. And I'm with you, Mike. I think Purdue is going to look at last season like, okay, you know what? You guys beat up on us last year. It generally doesn't happen very many years in a row with a Matt Painter, Gene Katie team from there. So, I look for big things out of them in this coming year, which takes them out of, being down there at the bottom of the league. And you just hope Indiana, matches that, which I think we all think they will. Obviously we're an Indiana show, but it's just the league itself is just going to be amazing in my opinion.
Yeah, I think for Indiana to be one of those teams, and first of all, I think Trace has to improve. And I read a story that Kevin Brockway did last week for his group of newspapers about how hard he's working on being a perimeter threat. I mean, if he wants to be an NBA player, he knows he has to shoot better, has to shoot at all from farther out. I mean, it's just the way the game has gone. You turn on the NBA games now that are on every night, and you see how wildly important it is to be able to make a shot. I mean, that's why Ayo Dosunmu has everything else to play in the NBA, but shot 29% or something last year. If it shot 39% last year, it'd probably be a first-round pick. And so
right.
Trace has to find a way to become a threat from out there. And I think that's one element. But I think even more important is the chemistry that they develop between Rob Finney and Christian Lander. How do they play that? Who's got the ball? Is it whoever gets it goes? Then when it comes to a natural half court, it goes back to Rob. And can Christian operate well without the ball? Would you go ahead and play Christian on the ball because he's so dynamic offensively, but use Rob as a catch and shoot guy? And then the guy who plays on the ball defense. I mean, there's a lot of different ways they can play that, but I think that's the most important element of Indiana's season is figuring out how those two guys work together. Because if you empower them both and they both have great years, then I think Indiana's in the upper third of the Big Ten, and being upper third of the Big Ten is being top 25 in the country.
Oh, without question. I talked about this earlier. Luka Garza, even though with all the uncertainty and with COVID-19, and I guess that's weighing heavily on a lot of these guys' decision, but he's one that I'm still surprised that he came back, because no matter what, this dude's a top end pick, whether it's 1, 2, 3. But this year and next year, and I know the lure to win a national championship is always great, but usually that lure of the NBA is greater. And this, and I guess because of COVID, that just kind of changed everything. But a little surprised that he came back, because he is definitely league ready.
He's in a sense. I mean, his improvement from last year to this can only be incremental. It's not going to be like. He's not going to come out and average 35. I mean, that's just not going to happen.
Right.
So it's going to be marginal. But the thing that the NBA teams are afraid of him is because he's not laterally quick and he doesn't explode off the floor. So they worry about whether – and he's like if he was 7 feet and had those qualities, like legit 7 feet, he might have been able to get in the league now. But because he's not – I think he's closer to 6'9" and change – there just wasn't a market for him in the way that you might have thought for a guy who was Sporting News Player of the Year. But he had lots of offers from European teams as he said yesterday, for significant money, and he could certainly have played professionally. And yet he came back anyway because he felt like that he still could improve. That maybe he can find a way to convince the NBA that he is worthy of their league. And I think he did say, I love this place too much to leave it early. And people get really cynical about college basketball now and think it's only about where you can get in the draft. And you guys have been around it long enough. And I've been around it every day 35 years. And that's just not the way the players think. I mean, there's an element of you don't want to misspend your opportunity, for sure. But the guys who are playing, they care about playing, and they care about their teams. I very rarely have come across the player who's only interested in marketing himself. I maybe once or twice in the last 5 or 6 years, but it's pretty rare.
Yeah, it's more of an NFL type of thing that we see than the NBA.
And you know what? He's exactly right about that from the standpoint of, if I think back to the locker room and I think back to, Greg Graham and Calbert Chaney and, even Eric Anderson and those guys, like, it was never even – and it's different nowadays. I understand it. But even back then, like, I don't think Calbert would have left no matter what going into his senior year, because Calbert had a goal. And Calbert's mom had always talked about from day one, like, we had always talked about winning a national championship. And it was that big of a deal. And in hindsight, knowing the career that Calbert had in the NBA and the amount of money that he made, I think he would never tell you that he made the wrong decision. I mean, I think coming back for that opportunity to win, I don't think he would ever tell you that he regretted that decision at all.
Todd, the things are a little different now than when Calbert was playing. And so a guy like Calbert could get taken 6th overall and have the career that he did. That player is a lot more rare in this day. I mean, a Buddy Hield comes along a lot less often. But I do think that he comes around from time to time. And as I said, I mean, I don't know that Io's going to come out and do this. But if he came out and shot 39% this year, he's going to be a first-round pick. I mean, everything else he can do, then he's going to be a first-round pick. But right now, without that, he can't be. So I never put improvement past somebody. I mean, Buddy Hield, after his junior year, was not a top 10 pick. Buddy Hield, after his senior year, was the National Player of the Year and number 7 in the draft, and he's having a great career now. So I think the people who say that if you don't get out early, you've missed your window are wrong. I've seen too many guys who did get out early and missed their window because their window was a year or two later.
Well, and that was my last question, because I know you got to go, but I was going to ask, because of all these guys that are who normally would probably go that aren't, how many these guys are going to benefit greatly from this extra year in college, I would absolutely assume.
You have to do the work to make yourself benefit. That's the thing. When a guy comes back and he is, like I said with Io, and I wrote about this in a column on Saturday. I'm like, I think it's wonderful that Io's back. But now, I mean, he's got to take advantage of that. I mean, he's got to go in the gym and make himself into a terrific shooter. And there's nothing keeping you from that other than the work and the confidence. I mean, you can sit there in the gym all day and make 100 threes in a row, and then if you get in the game and you're thinking about, man, if I miss this shot, what are they going to think? What are they going to say? What are they going to write? What are they going to tweet? And then you miss that shot. So those are the two elements. And there's a third, of course, there's technique. But I don't think anybody's ever looked at Io's shot and said, that's a broken shot, man. That's never going in. I don't think that's the thing, because the shot from 14 feet is money. I mean, he shot well over 50% from 2-point range last year. And a lot of those were pull-up jumpers. So if you've got the technique to do that, you can become a proficient three-point shooter. Doesn't mean you're going to be Reggie Miller, but you can become a guy that people have to worry about making that shot. And that's, again, just like Luka has to go and do whatever it is that he believes his game needs, or what the NBA people told him he needs, and Trace I mentioned, you've got to be able to add to your game during this time down. And then when the season starts, you have to be able to show that you can employ it.
It's Mike DeCourcy from the Big Ten Network, Fox, and the Sporting News. Make sure you follow him, because if you're not, you're missing out on some incredible journalistic content. The Sporting News is one of the last bastions of great sports journalism left in this country, so you all be a subscriber as well. Mike, I can't thank you enough. When you join, it just makes the entire week better.
Oh, guys, thanks, man. You're the best. I enjoy you and Todd so much, and I'm always delighted to see one of your texts that you want to talk.
Mike DeCourcy, thank you so much, sir,
Thanks,
joining us
buddy.
here. Get the week started off right. I hope you have a great rest of your week, Mike. Thank you so much. This is Jim Coyle from Indiana Sports Beat with Coyle and Leary. Indiana Sports Beat is now a part of the Rivals Network. You can go to thehoosier.com to sign up. It's free. Catch the show there each day live or at your convenience. You can also like or follow us on Facebook, follow the show's rebroadcast anywhere you podcast. If we're not on a radio station where you live, we should be. Let your local station know they need to carry Indiana Sports Beat with Coyle and Leary, or simply go to thehoosier.com.